Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by the big man Bakar to preview Gameweek 5. Bakar, back on the channel. How you doing? How was last game week? We have a little brief overview of that, so we give some context for what you're thinking ahead of Gameweek 5.
Hi, Jack. Hello, and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Game week 4 went all right. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. I think it was a fairly average week for most people who I know. It was basically if you owned Haaland, you had a average week, above average week, or a good week. While people who didn't own Haaland were basically the main losers of the week in terms of the points, because this is the first time this season where people who've not picked Haaland have actually suffered, because all of the other heavy hitters, you look at Salah, Palmer, Saka, they didn't score heavily. So if anyone didn't pick Haaland, you've been heavily sort of punished for it this week. But yeah, I had Haaland, I had him captain. Apart from that, I had Dunk, who got a clean sheet. I had Bruno, who got a very welcome 5 point return. And apart from that, nothing much. I actually decided to use my two free transfers to get Salah,
Yeah,
because I looked at my team. I thought that I had a weak bench. I wanted to get rid of quite a few players in the team. The goalkeeper was weak. The defense especially needed some work. I don't think I can continue going forward with the likes of Dunk in my team, and even Konsa. Their fixtures are sort of turning. So the defense needed a bit of a revamp. The bench was extremely weak. And I wanted triple Arsenal mainly with Mbomo and probably one or two Brentford defenders. So I thought that the time was right for me to sort of commit to a Game Week 6 wildcard. And that is why I made the Saka to Salah transfer last week, which was funded by a Porro downgrade to a 4 million defender. I think I have been um, punished heavily for it. I must admit, because not only am I 5 points down in terms of my transfers, because Saka outscored Salah by 5 points. Now I am sort of running the risk of not having a playing 11 in case both um, João Pedro, and Alex Isak are ruled out,
yeah.
which could happen. I think Isak is more of a risk. João Pedro apparently has trained, so there's a good chance that he is fine, especially considering that the game is on Sunday. But Isak is more of a risk, in which case I'll have to sell Isak, which is fine. But if I have to address any more than one injury, then my team will be in trouble.
Yeah. To timestamp this, we're recording this on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. UK time. So yeah, we're doing this before press conferences, obviously. But just having a look at your team for the upcoming week, what are you thinking? If we don't hear like concrete, I mean, we'll hear stuff on these players. But before we hear that news, obviously you're going to wait for as long as possible. Just generally, what are you thinking? Obviously, if you've committed to a Game Week 6 wildcard now, you could go for something just punty this week. Although, because of the way that the chips, the transfers in regards to chips is different this year. Obviously, being able to carry through free transfers, it's sort of less viable to go with something like that this year, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I was hoping that I would be in a position where I could save the transfer, but the injuries would sort of force my hand, which is why potentially keeping two transfers would have now, in hindsight, looked better, because I could
Didn't
have.
didn't somebody tell you to potentially do that? Just wondering, just based on, can't remember who it
No,
was.
I
It's
mean,
the last video. Someone said, yeah, I'd
yeah.
definitely roll if I was you. I can't remember who that was, but
Neither can I. I mean, I seem to have a goldfish's memory, and I seem to be a patient of selective amnesia, sorry, dementia. So yeah, I I think I can uh, yeah. But yeah, I mean, you were right. I guess I did it because I wanted to commit to the Game Week 6 wildcard. I
yeah.
wanted Salah for the Game Week 4 fixture, Game Week 5 fixture, and if Salah does well this week, I guess to quite a large extent that transfer would have been vindicated. Because even if I had two free transfers, I don't think I would be going without Salah this week. I think
No.
Salah would still be my number one
Yeah.
target to bring in.
Yeah.
So Salah would have come. It would just have been maybe through an Isak downgrade to a cheaper forward. And now sort of my route to an Isak replacement is different as opposed to what it might have been last week. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with my thought processes.
So what are you thinking then in terms of concrete stuff? Let's go through some potential situations that could happen with your team. First of all, if just Isak is out and João Pedro is deemed fit, I think that is probably the most likely thing at the time of recording. I mean, I hope as an Isak and João Pedro owner that they're both fit. I think it's more likely that João Pedro will be, though, just based on what we're hearing with Isak having potentially 2 injuries.
Apparently, he's recovered from one, and apparently, Newcastle will be doing their best to manage
Okay.
to field him for the trip to Fulham, but it's still sort of up in the air. So we don't really know. It seems like fairly 50-50. Actually, it's uh, marginally looking bad, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think
Really?
he will start
Right.
because, I mean, the two ways you can look at it. You can say that they don't have any other recognized striker, so they need him. But because they don't have any other recognized striker, they might not want to risk him in one game, right?
Yeah.
Uh, at the cost of risking further injury. So that's a couple of ways of looking at it. But either way, I'm sort of prepared. If all I want is João Pedro to be fit or Isak to be fit, one of them to be fit. If both of them are fit, great. If one of them is fit, still everything is fine. But if both of them are fit, then I will be in trouble, and I don't want to take a hit. I may have to field Harry Winks, in which case, which
Oof.
is not ideal at all. And I don't necessarily want to wildcard this week as well, because the whole point of sort of wildcarding in Game Week 6 was to get rid of my Brighton, for example, Dunk, Salah, Henderson, all these guys. I don't really want him in my team from Game Week 6 onwards. So if I decide to wildcard in 5, it will be very tricky to sort of navigate my way forward.
Let's have a look at the AI's recommendation for your team. If you guys don't know what this is somehow, then every week Fantasy Football Hub's AI will give you a recommendation for your team as to what to do in terms of your transfers and selection. And Isak is the recommendation to be sold here, and it's actually Chris Wood who's coming in. This is a player that if you've seen the other videos on the channel this week, you will know has been highly pushed by the AI. Despite the fact that there may be other players out there with a higher ceiling, you could argue, in Game Week 5 in particular, it still thinks that Wood is the best for predicted points, predicting Wood to score 5.5 this week, which is above the likes of Vardy, Calvert-Lewin, etc. So what do you think about that move if Isak is out?
I think I'm a bigger fan of Chris Wood than I was at the start of the season. I'll put it that way,
Yeah.
because I probably overestimated the threat of rotation from Abonee. That hasn't necessarily been the case, and he's played well. So I think in the short term, he should be good to go. I don't necessarily mind him as an option, but I think there are better picks out there who I might consider picking. So, for example, in my case, let's say if Isak was to be ruled out, and I'm not going to trust Eddie Howe with whatever he says,
Oh
because
no.
he is one of the worst guys to trust for any credible information. I think
Yeah, outside of football as well. Just ask us what. That's not funny. Just carry on. Sorry.
you can. I think what you can rely on is probably training pictures that we might get from Newcastle tomorrow. And if Isak isn't pictured, or if he isn't seen traveling with the squad, then I think I'm going to risk selling him. I'm looking at Solanke as a potential option in my team. I really
Yeah.
like him. I think he's only 7 million owned. He was really popular at the start of the season. I think you started with him as well, if I'm not mistaken, or didn't you?
I didn't end up doing it just because I thought it was a little bit risky, just not sure how
Yeah.
he'd settle in. But I really like the Solanke pick. He's one that I didn't mention there because he's at that sort of a different price bracket. But if you do have Isak, I do like that. I do like that Solanke move a lot. Comparing him to Chris Wood in terms of predicted points for this week, he's actually very, very similar, as you can see on screen, just zero point 0.1 in it. It's just whether you'd go with him over someone like a Wood who has actually been scoring goals this season. We don't know who's going to be on penalties for Nottingham Forest. We don't know who's going to be on penalties for Tottenham either. But yeah, I do like the Solanke pick. Brentford at home, good fixture, obviously.
Solanke hasn't been scoring because he's only played twice, right? That's the
Still not
thing.
been scoring,
Chris Wood
man.
has played
Still not
like
been scoring.
Chris Wood has played
You're
four
right.
times,
You're
and
right.
I also like I think this fixture for Solanke is far better. Home to Brentford for a Spurs side
Yeah.
is much better than taking on Brighton away. Brighton are decent defensively. I'm playing Dunk. I'm fairly, I would say, quietly confident of some return again from him. But I think when you look at Solanke, why I sort of like him is for this week, I think he's the ideal sort of 1 week punch to have. Main reason being he's played 90 minutes in both the fixtures. He's had plenty of shots. The underlying data is good. I still think there's an outside chance that he's on penalties. I think a goal is coming, and this is probably the week where he gets it.
Yeah, I like that shout a lot. I'm just having a look at other players that you could potentially go to if Isak is out. Mateta.
I'll mention them.
Mateta, you've not mentioned. What do you think about him? He is literally the form player. I know he scored 2 in the most recent game week, but back end of last season, he was on absolute fire. And a decent Olympics, and obviously was a bit tired after that. So yeah, minutes weren't guaranteed at the start of the season, but comes back into the team, looks great again, and importantly, I think took the last penalty. Now, if you've seen the video of him actually taking the penalty and the sort of the discussion before that with Eze, he was very adamant. He was like, "No, it's my penalty. I'm taking it," and Eze just kind of had to cede and just say, "Okay, fine," and he scored.
I think Matera is a good shout, but I think for people who are looking to go for a cheap forward, I was actually playing around with the idea of wildcard 5, wildcard 6 drafts. And in every single one of them, I think a cheap forward would be very, very popular. In
Yeah.
fact, even people who are not on a wildcard and people who are looking, let's say, to upgrade Saka to Salah, they're looking for a way of releasing cash from Isak, and they're looking for a cheap forward. They're in the market for one. I would look at Calvert-Lewin. I think Calvert-Lewin is a good shout, if fit being the key
Yeah,
word,
what's
because
happened here? I just noticed he's got a flag. I mean, it's probably to be
apparently
expected
he
with
was
this
ill.
player, but okay, he's ill. All right, okay. That is all right.
Apparently,
I'll take
apparently he was
that.
ill.
Honestly, that's not bad. I thought it would be a hamstring.
Apparently he was ill. I guess we wait for news in the press conferences tomorrow. But he's one I sort of have my eye on. In fact, even in the rough Game Week 6 wildcard draft that I prepared, I had him in my team because of Everton's fixtures going forward. They're really, really strong. So you can play him this week. I mean, Leicester is as good a fixture as you'll get. And then after this week, Everton are playing Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West
Yeah.
Ham. That's a really, really strong round of fixtures. I mean, the caveat being that there's a risk, a genuine risk of this guy getting injured at any point, and
Yeah,
he
but
does seem to have a very fragile injury record. So he could get injured, but for now, he's a good pick if
for sure.
he's fit.
I have to give you some credit here because you mentioned him in our video last week, and I kind of laughed at you because I thought, really, Calvert-Lewin? Are we 2 years in the past, 3 years in the past? But had a really good game week 4. Just looked kind of back to his best as well. Just looked strong. Still a little bit rusty. I think his finishing could have been better in that game. But in terms of you like your underlying data, that chance he had where he tried to sort of shift it onto his left foot and couldn't even get a shot away when he was 1-on-1. You won't see that in expected data because he didn't get a shot off. But that's a massive chance. So even if you're looking at the data where he does well, it's less than it probably should have been.
And even if you sort of ignore the expected underlying data, he's only behind Haaland and Wissa among forwards for goal involvement. So he's actually been getting the goals and the assists that you expect him. He's done well this season for
Yeah.
goal involvements. So again, the caveat being the injury, but yeah, I mean, if apart from that, let's say Vardy's another one who is all right. I don't think he's a terrible pick. Leicester have decent fixtures. At the start of the season, I thought that Vardy might miss a few games here or there. I think he should be fine with the form that he's showing so far for the next few games at least. And I'm only sort of talking about like short-term fixes for the next 4 to 6 games. So in that price bracket, in order to sort of fund Salah, I like Calvert-Lewin, I like Vardy. I think both of them are fine. If you're looking at a 1 week punt or if you have more funds, then I really like Solanke. I think if you're on a wild card this week, I would probably pick Calvert-Lewin as opposed to Solanke because he allows you to get the Trents of this world and the Gabriels because of the price difference that he has
Right.
between him and Solanke. But yeah, that's very team dependent. It's team specific. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in black and white that I can answer regarding who is the best Isak replacement or the João Pedro replacement. Again, it's very team specific, and this is sort of my thinking behind the best options.
Okay, so there we go. That is it for your sort of discussion for your team in terms of team selection this week. Obviously, yeah, as I said, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. If you guys do want to see what Bakar ends up going with for this week, the only way to do that pre-deadline is to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub and check out his team reveal article, link down below. It's still 50% off at the time of recording. You still get a 7-day free trial, and you still will get all your money refunded to you if you do not win one of your mini leagues this year. That mini league you have to let us know about. But if you follow the T's and C's, you'll get a full refund if you do not win your mini league. That is how confident we are in Fantasy Football Hub. In terms of your overall game week rating, team rating, it's looking pretty strong, to be fair, my friend. 65.5 predicted points this week. Now, I've got the captaincy on Salah, as he is predicted to score a little bit more than Haaland. Do you think you're going to go with Salah? And if so, why?
I think he's by far the optimal captaincy option this week. I don't think it's close between him and Haaland,
Not
personally.
close at all.
Even when you look at, I don't think it's close because
Really?
the ceiling is much higher. The ceiling is much higher.
Is it definitely?
Because yeah, I would expect Haaland to score once, but I don't expect him to get more than one attacking
Yeah.
return because of the difficulty level of the fixture. But Liverpool could win 4-0 or 4-1, and Salah could end up bracing.
Yeah.
So I think Haaland is likely to get close to 7-8 points. Salah could get a double-digit haul.
Yeah. No, I'm only playing devil's advocate. I do agree with you. And I think, to be fair, in that Inter Milan game, we sort of saw a little regression. I think City had something like 2.6.
I won't let
XG.
one
No, I'm just saying,
game put me off.
Not from Haaland in particular. He didn't have loads of chances, just from the team, maybe. There's no doubt that they have been, as a side, they have been outperforming their expected numbers. And people that know about expected data will say that there will be, at some point, it's a guarantee that there has to be, who knows when, but there has to be a regression, either upwards or downwards to where the data should suggest you'd be. With Haaland, I mean, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I've tweeted a little bit differently to that. But who knows? We'll have to see. And there's no doubt about it. Arsenal are the best defence, maybe in the world, right now, across the past 18 months, to be fair.
Jack, because this is a Game Week 5 preview, I'd like to sort of address a few other questions as well. Eze is one very important talking point. You mentioned Mateta. There's a decent chance that Eze might have lost penalties. We still don't know for sure, but okay, let's assume that's the case. Is it enough to put me off from owning him? I don't think so. Yes, his appeal lessens, of course, because penalties are big. I sort of place a very strong weight on penalties when deciding between 50-50 decisions.
Yeah.
But as his non-pen XGI numbers this season have been very strong as well, even without penalties. So I don't think he's a bad pick, even if he's lost penalties, because he will continue to be nailed for starts. He will continue getting these decent XGI numbers. So as long as he's getting those underlying data and those numbers, he's still a decent pick to own. I don't think we need to sort of panic about Eze as such. Apart from that, I'd also sort of like to address a lot of people are actually in this dilemma where they don't own Salah and they have, let's say, someone has one free transfers, others have two, and they're considering whether or not to buy Salah this week. I think this is actually the toughest question of the week to address because from what I gather, a lot of people who will end up buying Salah with one free transfer or two free transfers will inevitably end up in a position where they will find it really hard to get Mbomo next week. They'll find it hard to get a triple Arsenal next week. So they might be locking themselves into a Game Week 6 wildcard by using the two free transfers or one free transfer on Salah. Now, there's one side of the argument that you get Salah, but you lock yourself into a wildcard in 6. The other side of the argument is that, let's say if you have one or two free transfers and you have a reasonable team, you decide to roll the transfer, you captain Haaland, and you are willing to take the risk of taking the Salah captaincy on. But then with those three free transfers, you can get Mbomo next week, you can get double Arsenal next week, and you're set for a while. You don't necessarily have to wildcard in Game Week 6. But then you run the risk of not having Salah as captain in Game Week 5. So this is a very tough question to answer, and I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people have sort of asked me and are going through this predicament where they don't exactly know what to do. I think the answer that there's no right or wrong answer to this. I think it depends on the risk appetite, if I'm being totally honest. If you're a maverick manager who wants to take on the risk and you're sort of happy to take the L if Salah goes nuclear this week, at the cost of, let's say, maximizing returns over the next 6 weeks, then I think not going for Salah this week also makes sense. But if you're a manager who wants to stay with the template and not take on the Salah captaincy option, especially when he's going to be so heavily captained, I think that sort of makes sense as well. Which way are you on?
Yeah, I would struggle not to have Salah this week as captain, I think. I agree with you. Like, if you haven't gone for him last week, it makes it easier to not, or more tempting to not go with him this week. I think that last week it was more of a, okay, if you were thinking of captaining last week, I know a lot of people didn't, then whatever. I think it was more of an easier decision to say, yeah, okay, I'm going to need him for these next 2 weeks, especially game week 5 captaincy, which is what we all had penciled in. But I don't know. Like, I put myself in your position last week, and if you had rolled, I agree with you. If you have 2 frees, I definitely would still go there. For a hit, I think that's very, very tough because
For my team,
again,
though, for my team, it's still sort of different because I still don't have a good bench. I don't have a good goalkeeper. There are enough issues in my team to potentially wildcard in six anyway,
anyway,
right?
yeah,
But there are other people who, let's say, they have Flecken, who's a good keeper, or Raya, who's a good keeper, or they have a Gabriel in their team, or they have one
yeah.
Arsenal,
I think it does
right?
depend on Arsenal players, a lot of it, because I'm just
Ex-
looking at game week
exactly,
6 and 7. I'm going to really struggle not to have. I would really struggle not having at least 2 Arsenal players, ideally 3.
exactly, right?
So
So
it's
I mean,
about
I
that.
was I was in no position to have any Arsenal for game week 6. Uh, anyway, had I, it was basically either Salah plus locking in the wild card, or uh,
Yeah,
basically a foregoing Arsenal, right?
yeah,
It was basically that. So I think this is very team dependent as well, and it depends on your risk appetite. I think this is actually the toughest question to answer of the week, as
interesting.
to sort of which way you go.
I think a lot of it depends as well, just how you sort of value a wild card. Do you only play it when you think your team really needs it, or do you want to be quite aggressive? Because if you think, okay, I'm fine, I've got a couple of Arsenal players, or I can get to 2, and my team looks all right apart from that, then maybe you don't need to use it. But if other teams out there, if other managers like me or you are really going and getting 3 solid Arsenal picks, maybe one of our forwards is slightly more optimal, for want of a better word, at the time, and then you're sacrificing, 5 to 10 points in game week 6, is that worth it as well? Or are you going to keep sort of losing points until you eventually wildcard? Will you make those up? I'm not sure. I don't know. I think the free transfers as well, the new transfer rule does change things as well a little bit. Just the fact that if you wildcard into a strong team, you can then ideally build up quite a few transfers pretty quickly without having to touch your team, and then you can react to swings and fixture swings and news and form a bit more without taking hits. I would say that the game week 6 fixture swing is strong enough to warrant going for a wild card, unless you really do have a very strong setup for game week 6. That's personally what I'd say, and I agree. I do think Salah is important this week. But if you, yeah, I get what you're saying. If you are a little bit riskier and you think, you know what, Haaland's in the form of his life, I'm happy to captain him and kind of ride it out this week, then you don't want to go for Salah, then maybe you don't need to wildcard 6, because I don't think Salah is going to be on many wildcard 6s, to be fair. So maybe you can get away with it. Yeah.
Yeah, very tricky question to sort of answer.
It's a tough one.
Anything else we have to cover? I think we've covered
I think
everything,
we've covered
if I'm
everything.
not mistaken.
What I want is the people to answer Bakar's question down below. Maybe you don't have to write as many words as we've just spoken there, but I'd love to know your thoughts on that one. Put yourself in that specific position. Maybe you're in that position. What are you thinking? I hadn't really thought about it, because I do sort of just in general think about my own team more than just general teams. That's probably pretty selfish of me given my position, but it's just what I tend to do. And I have Salah, but I hadn't really thought about, if you've not got him, do you go for him? It just seemed like an inevitability, but I don't know. The main thing when I was talking about your team last week and rolling, it was always to then get Salah this week. That was never up for debate. It was more just what you do with the second transfer. But I hadn't even thought about it like that. Maybe if you did have another Arsenal player, you'd be thinking, oh, do I need to get him this week? Can I back myself and save the wild card?
And if I didn't own bloody Konza, I would have done that.
Kwanzaa, the boy, yeah, still knocking about. Still knocking about. I wonder what price will be when you eventually get rid of him. That must be one of the worst. I mean, I was
I
very, very close to having him to be fair. That wasn't a bad move on paper, but in terms of outcomes, that's got to be up there with one of the worst sort of Game Week 1 picks that we've ever seen, right? He's dropped, what, 0.3 and got 1 point?
Shocking.
Yeah, crazy. Unlucky.
Shocking.
It's very unlucky. But there we go. Guys,
moving on.
Let's move on to next week and hope we do. Well, we're both on red arrows. Let's get some greens next week. As I said, guys,
And both
make
of us
sure
will
to
be
check
on
out the
wildcards.
Good point.
Next week.
Next week we'll be on wildcards. This week, teams look good. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, get in the comments down below. Very interested to hear your thoughts. If you do go in the comments regularly, you'll know that Bakar is in there a lot. I read through them as well. If you get a little heart react on your comment, that is from me. So yeah, drop us a comment. And yeah, good luck next game week. Bakar, thank you very much. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you for having me. Good luck, everyone.
Of course,
Thank you.
You're always welcome. Good luck, guys.